You were born into a mystery, and now you are experiencing life. Questions. What is the nature of reality? Are you a creator, a co-creator, or are you just taking the ride? What is possible for you in this world, in this life? What does it mean to be alive, to experience more of the experience of life? What happens when you change the way that you think? What happens when you ask questions and go silent and just listen? What happens when you go play with the mystery of the universe? What happens when you go questing the unknown? You were born into a mystery. And now you are experiencing life. Welcome to this episode of Questing the Unknown. I'm so excited for you to be here with me, and I always appreciate you. And I am excited to share this conversation that I had today with my friend Jack Forem. I've been wanting to get Jack on the show for a couple months now. And Jack Forem, he is an amazing human being. He's a writer, a ghostwriter, spiritual teacher. He's taught all over the world. He wrote and published, I believe, the first book on transcendental meditation in 1973. I have that correct, but he wrote that in 1973. A revised edition has been published in 2012, 2013. Jack and I, we've known each other, and I've known his wife, Roberta, who's also incredible, for probably about 4 years. And I get the opportunity a couple times a year when I happen to be in their part of the woods to have a conversation with them, just talk. And we have a lot of fun just conversing about whatever it is we converse about. There's a great community wisdom in both of them, and it's fun for me to get to share that and go into these types of conversations. And I really wanted to bring that to you. So I have some links below this, the page, so you can go visit Jack's site at jackforem.com. You can find out more about him. You can check out his book if you want. He's, again, a wonderful human being. In this conversation, we just explore, we play, we go questing the unknown as I do. And we're going to touch on topics like vegetarianism and veganism, drugs like LSD and his experience with that, and the process of spiritual awakening, whatever that might mean. We'll talk a little bit about enlightenment and quite a few other things. We just have a really good time. So it's a great honor for me to be able to share this and have you come in on the conversation as well. And I hope it serves you in beautiful, wonderful ways. And I really, am here to just take you on the journey, to be there with you, to assist in the seeing of our own lives and doing that for ourselves. So we're going to roll right into the conversation. Enjoy, have fun. Please leave a comment below if you would like. If you have questions, I would love to hear from you. It'd be wonderful for me. So here it is, Jack and I in a conversation with you. Questing the unknown for me is a deeper idea. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just using all these different mediums to explore and tease it apart and then share it as a concept to sort of, well, for me, it's sort of like the base idea actually is one of like awakening. And so whatever that is, we can talk about that in a little bit. But so the first one, I just started sharing a bit about it, and it's not to like all of the levels are of value, but so I'm just using this language loosely. It's a little more superficial and it keeps going deeper and deeper. Mm-hmm. So, but it's not superficial necessarily. It's just like opening up.
No, I appreciate that. That's how I write everything.
Okay.
I start every chapter at square one with whatever it is I'm talking about. And then I build from there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I totally get that theory, that philosophy.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so I'll probably actually just roll with a lot of what we're saying right now in just this conversation as it's going to play and just supernaturally just because it's fun. Okay. And I don't have a framework or anything like that to go into it. And I always just love our conversations.
I just mentioned to you that you got to do one with Roberta.
I would love to, yeah.
Because the truth is, everybody thinks that I'm really smart and reflective and philosophical and all that because I write books. But she's much more that way than I am. She's more interior, and she examines her experience much more assiduously than I do. Mine, you know, I do a little bit. But she's really one who's thoughtful about her life and her progress. And so she'll be a great person to interview. I'll do my best, you know.
Cool. I expect nothing less.
So are you a vegan? Is that why you don't do butter?
That is why, yeah.
Good for you. How long have you been able to do that?
About 16 years now. So
that's beautiful.
Yeah, it's great. I love it. It was actually one of the best things I ever did in my life. And by the way, so I'll talk. Roberta is Jack's wife. So
yeah,
if someone's listening to this, she's amazing. So it was actually one of the best decisions I ever made for a number of reasons. But one, because it automatically put me in a place where I had to stand on my own 2 feet and speak my truth. And
because other people don't understand
Other people don't understand it, or they'll judge it, or 15 years ago in particular, it's dangerous, you don't know what you're doing, da-da-da-da-da.
Oh, yeah.
All sorts of other things. And it's a huge ideology.
I was being a vegetarian in the early 70s.
Yeah.
Nobody had a clue that that was even a reasonable thing to do.
Yeah.
So I know what you're talking about.
And it's beautiful, right? Because it unravels and plays in a way where it develops for you the ability. I mean, you might already had that, but for me, it really solidified sort of my own strength in myself to be alone and be able to like search truths for myself and have that be very experiential as well. And that was just like one of the best things that ever happened to me in that regard.
It's great. I admire it.
Yeah.
I was a strict vegetarian for about 17 years, which included no eggs, but I did have some dairy.
Sure. And
then I had a girlfriend. You know, women are the cause of all downfalls, right? It's the tradition in the West.
Right.
Anyway, I had this girlfriend. She mocked me, you know. We were having dinner at some time, and she was eating fish, and she said, just have a bite. And I said, I haven't had a bite of anything like that in 17 years. I don't want to. She said, just, it's not going to kill you. Have a bite. And I really don't. Come on, have a bite. So I had a bite, and I kind of liked it.
Yeah, definitely.
So I have had a little bit of fish. You know, that's as far as I've gone. I can't.
Oh, Jack, you're in the dark side, man.
I am. I know. I'm under the control of the dark powers. Next thing you know, I'm going to be a Republican. Sorry.
No.
You could edit that out if you want to.
It's your call. I'll happily leave whatever, but yeah. No. That's funny. No, I'm not a politically correct human being. So, yeah. So, I'll probably leave that, but I think, do you have anything else that you want to just like play with before we like maybe jump into it?
Not really.
Cool.
Whatever's on your mind. You've probably thought about things you want to ask me to talk about. Or
yeah, I mean, definitely. So we'll just...
It's your shtick. So I'll just follow your lead.
Cool. Yeah. So basically like how I do much of my life is I just play. Just let it unfold as it unfolds. So we'll just dance together in this regard.
That sounds great. I remember you told me this wonderful story about going to a conference, I think it was. It was near Santa Barbara. And all the different ways that serendipity just led you from one good thing, one good person to another.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I have really actually lived a lot like that myself. I'm not a planner. And anytime I've tried to plan things, it just never has worked out, because in the moment that the plan is supposed to come to fruition, something else is happening. And I've always gone with the something else.
Yeah.
I mean, when I lived in Boston, I would buy, a couple of times, I bought season tickets to a concert series. I love classical music.
Okay. The three
I never
Bs.
went. Because when the day came up,
yeah.
you know, it wasn't what was happening that day.
Absolutely.
I've always been kind of in awe of people who could make a plan and fill out a calendar and then just go through it step by step. I just can't live that way.
That's a fun place to play, actually, because it's something that I encounter in a lot of the conversations I have with other people as well. Like this idea of planning. And I think, like, I don't plan so much, but it's as if when I do plan, it's nice. It gives me a little framework at first, and then it just dissipates.
Doesn't it?
And then, absolutely, yeah. And then, because
it gives you a starting point.
It gives you a starting point, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It can give some sort of inspiration as well and some sort of focus. Because it's interesting, too, because Jack's a writer, author, and that kind of has a plan and a vision in and of itself of what's creating, but it creates itself at the same time.
That's a really good point, because people always ask me, and sometimes I do ghostwriting too, and people that I write for, they want to know, what's my outline? How am I going to do it? And I say, I don't know. I'm going to discover it as I go.
Yeah.
I'll have a general sense of what I want to do, but everything, every page, but certainly, in the bigger sense, every chapter, it's a new world. I don't know where it's going to go. And I wouldn't want it to be any other way. It would be boring.
Yes.
And just have it outlined at just, point A, point B, point
Absolutely.
B. It'd be boring. So
that's one of the main points I always drive at or try to get to with the idea of questing the unknown. And that's one of the reasons why I actually started creating it, is because sort of what's implicit in what you're saying right there is there's a lack, or there's a desire for control that a lot of us have. And that control can cause a sort of neurosis of sorts. And again, I'll use language loosely here. But it can create that kind of thing. And then when we can recognize that living in the unknown is actually, one, it's full of energy and life and awe and inspiration. Yeah. But also when you can accept that and live in that place, and from that place, it creates more security and actually more control, because you're comfortable with it.
Whatever happens, you're cool.
Exactly. And that is actually like the nature of reality, is as much as we want to think that we're controlling for the next moment, we're not. And one way to really see this is with writing. I think that's what you just said makes it apparently super evident. And then also the very nature of the conversation we're having. I have no idea where the words are going to come from, what words are going to come from next. Yeah. And that's always just a really blatant example of how we don't know. I can't even control my thoughts for the next 5 seconds.
Yeah. Well, you probably could if you really wanted to.
I could,
but
in some sense.
That's the point,
Right. Why would I want to? So,
but in a way you do, I think. I mean, I'm going to just put this out there. You probably thought about, okay, I'm going to be talking to Jack, and there would be these things that I could talk to him about, because he's a writer, because he has these experiences. So you have a sort of a structure, but within that structure, it's freewheeling.
Definitely. So I love this. We get to go play in so many different ways. One of my favorite ideas is the concept that the infinite exists within the finite. And that's sort of, we have grammatical rules, yet we can create infinite amount of meanings in sentences. You have fractal geometry. You have this very specific set, the context, and then it keeps going and going and going and going. So, I mean, that's all encompassed in everything that we're saying right now. Yeah.
Well, the infinite, it's as I understand it, it's the transcendental absolute, being, divine being. I don't know if you want to get into this kind of stuff in our conversations, but that's how I experience it and understand it. And it's everywhere. It's within every fiber of the finite, because, I mean, you say finite, but what's it made out of? The fiber of it is infinite, something bigger.
And so the finite, right? Absolutely. So the finite doesn't exist. It's just a context, a construct that we've created to understand things. But all of these things just are the same thing. The finite is the infinite.
But paradoxically, it does exist.
Right.
Not on its own. I mean, this table is here. But ultimately, the table is bigger than the molecules and atoms and subnuclear whatever. It's the absolute. It's pure being. But most people don't want to know that.
Yes.
Because how do you deal with that?
How do you deal with it?
I just enjoy it.
Yeah. So, okay, when you were mentioning just a minute ago how I had an idea about things I might want to speak about with you, one of the things that kept coming up for me is like, how do I have this conversation? Because so often, one of the things I love about my time with you is that we don't really have to say anything because it's sort of just understood.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the words are a bridge to maybe a deeper understanding. As all of this like language between us goes, body language, movements, energy, who knows what's going on there. But then it also, but it also serves a purpose to use the words to explain and explore and to take other people into the journey as well, so they can sense and see that. Because for me, again, like coming back to the very, having a visceral experience of what you just said, because it's very easy for us to, it's easy in some way to say the table is not the table, but is the table. And it's this and all, but yet to really understand what that means and then to know it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is another journey, another aspect of this. Yeah. Maybe we could talk about for a few minutes, and if you want to. Well, because you could say it all in a few minutes.
You're on, go. You're on a roll.
Yeah.
I'll pipe it if you.
Yeah, no, because it's my experience of it. So this is why I'm always writing, creating, sharing, and it's because I'm trying to find a way to share that experience with others. Right. And it seems to be the best way that I can do that. So my experience, so this is really interesting to me because there's something last time we spoke, we got coffee last time, was, and if you don't mind me sharing, you said you felt like you had a responsibility to make the world a better place and to share. Yeah. And I don't. And
lazy bum.
I know. I have other things to do. Exactly. Stare at the clouds.
Exactly. That's
stare at the clouds in the sky. And
we all have our little place in the big picture.
I do feel a kind of responsibility, but yeah.
You wouldn't do stuff like this.
Absolutely.
If you didn't. Right. You want to share with others because you appreciate the depth and the beauty of life, and you know that a lot of people don't as much as you do. And I'm putting words in your mouth.
Yes,
here,
thank you.
But you feel free to tell me I'm full of it. But I think that you have these deeper perceptions, and you want other people to rise up and share them in their own way.
Yeah, absolutely.
They don't have to have your perceptions.
Sure,
but to appreciate life, it's a great blessing to be here.
It is. So, okay, so I'm going to tie that back into what how when you flipped it over to me about the table being one and everything, and then why the responsibility and not having the sense of responsibility exists for me in some ways. And we'll just sort of see how they weave together. Okay. So the reason why I don't necessarily feel the responsibility, but it's there, is that why it felt different to me when you said it is because in some strange way, I don't feel that separation between the other. And if there isn't that separation, then where's my responsibility to the other, where the other is sort of like part of the dream that I'm in as well. And I am part of the dream itself. And so
it's a very beautiful expression of your experience. It's beautiful. And some of the great saints of the 20th century who I've read say the same thing. And one of my favorite guys is called Nisargadatta Maharaj. He wrote a book called I Am That. Oh, well, he didn't write it. It was talks of his that were transcribed. And somebody said to him, I want to make the world better. And his answer, what world? He had a vision of things that was bigger than the world. It was a cosmic vision. But yet he taught. He had people come to him on a regular basis, and he gave talks, and he did, kirtan chanting with those people because it's what he did.
Yeah, absolutely. It's his form of expression.
Yeah, like the spider weaves its webs, and the saints do their thing. They just can't help it. So, and you do your thing, which will have your stamp on it.
Yes.
Your universality will have its own individuality.
Yeah, sweet. That's a beautiful phrase.
So I keep pulling you out. You're trying to get back to something, and I keep
leaning
away.
No, it goes where it goes.
Okay. This is
good. You enjoying it? Yeah, it's nice chocolate. So also when I have conversations, I don't, and you already know this, I don't have a need for speed in that regard. I don't mind slowing down and just like taking space, and our lovely who's listening right here can take space with us as whatever's coming is coming. So I'm contemplating right now, just like, do I want to go deeper into the idea of that level of using sort of the responsibility as just a sort of heuristic to expand on that kind of topic of I am that, or awakening, or you are me. And when I'm doing what I'm doing and you're doing what you're doing, for me, in some strange way, sometimes it's very real. Sometimes it's very dualistic in the sense of I'm having a conversation with myself right now, and it just happens that I'm appearing in this carnation as Jack form. So
how does it feel to be?
It's fun. That's why I love it. That's why I wanted to get here, get you in my life again when I'm in Boise, like on these conversations. Well, yes. So that could sound very esoteric and very like, whoa, what is that? And it can also sound very real and be very real in the sense that there's two levels to that for me. So one is very much that I can only have my own experience of you. And so no matter what or who I'm experiencing, whether it's, I'm experiencing the table that is holding up everything, or I'm experiencing you, I'm still bringing it all through me. So I'm at the center of the universe in that regard. So I'm having these perceptions and conceptions of the experience of you. Mm-hmm. And that's very real. So I have no idea subjectively how you're experiencing me, or how you will not know how I'm experiencing you. And that's kind of why I think we're all mysteries to each other in this regard, which makes it a lot of fun.
Yeah. And that's why exploring the mystery is such an important and beautiful part of life.
Absolutely.
Let me use that to plug your show. No, but I think what you're saying, and correct me if I'm distorting your thought, but I think we are all consciousness. Mm-hmm. And in a certain sense, consciousness is basically all there is. It's everything. Mm-hmm. And we are like little centers of consciousness experiencing itself in different forms. I'm experiencing consciousness in terms of my own Jack Forem thoughts and perceptions, but I'm also experiencing consciousness as you. Mm-hmm. You are me. You are that. I am essentially consciousness. And the Jack Forem part is, a superimposition or something on that consciousness, or it's, does that make any sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I am experiencing you in the same way I experience myself in the deeper sense, not the personality self, but the essential self. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Of course, the personality self is also the same thing. Mm-hmm. It's tricky.
It is tricky.
Because it can't really be anything other than that.
Yes.
But anyway. This is deep water.
Yeah.
You wanted to go deeper. I think this is about as deep as I go.
No, that's beautiful. That's perfect, because to me, again, so the question that comes up in my mind, and just to take everyone else and anyone else on the journey along, is, I guess, really, and this is why I mentioned, oftentimes we won't have to say anything about anything because there's nothing to be said about it. Nevertheless, part of this responsibility, or part of my entertainment and fun, and the joy I get out of life, is sort of loosely, again, using this word, sort of like awakening others and myself to, we can talk about what awakening is, but just to the experience of life itself. Mm-hmm. And so this kind of thing begs the question of well, how do I do that? How do I get to? And so the obvious things are kind of, contemplation, self-exploration, asking questions, meditation. So transcendental meditation is your wonder, and so on and so forth. So maybe talk about that for a moment or two, if you would. And just like how one would actually, from your perspective, go deep diving into that world so they can experience more of.
Well, my experience, before I learned transcendental meditation, which was a long time ago, I had tried some other things. I tried sitting zazen and some other kinds of work, which most people nowadays haven't even heard of, Gurdjieff, Uspensky stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I had a little bit of something happen, but when I tried transcendental meditation, it's like I slipped into a big awareness of unboundedness and inner silence. And I can't say that it was a permanent thing, it was a momentary thing. But by practicing it regularly, more and more it becomes permanent, like you practice anything, you get better at it.
Yeah.
And I don't think you get better at TM per se, but the experience deepens and expands. The practice itself is very easy, and so you're pretty good at it right from the start.
Yeah, that's...
because it uses, I don't want to sound like I'm doing a commercial for TM, but it uses the natural tendency of the mind, which is to seek greater happiness or more, something more.
Absolutely.
More knowledge, more being, more love, more whatever. Some people even take it in the direction of more money and more fame and more power. And that's okay. It's part of the natural tendency of life. And hopefully they'll outgrow that and come to something more substantial that, that they'll want. But anyway, so that's been my path. And ever since that time, which was, I'll just say it was 1967, and I've never felt the need to try anything else or do anything else. Before I learned that, I also did a little bit of taking drugs, just very little. I took LSD like half a dozen times, and I found that to be very enlightening and very expanded and very beautiful. But then I felt that my nervous system paid the price for that. There's this come down into the flat gray reality, which is what it felt like. And I said, okay, I know that this higher level of being exists. I don't have any doubt anymore. And so I'm just going to go for it in a natural way. I'm not going to use these drugs.
You were already having these insights pre-LSD? Or did the LSD I had some insights pre-LSD, and the LSD confirmed it for me. Because, when you have experiences that are so different from the norm in your culture, there's a part of you that knows that it's real and another part that says, come on, you're crazy, who are you trying to kid? But when I'd had that experience like 5 or 6 times in a row with the LSD, and it was the same experience, the same bright, brilliant, expanded, divine reality that I was moving in, I said, okay, I believe you. And so then I really got serious about the quest to live it, in a permanent sort of way. And would you say that has happened? Because usually, I know psychedelics can be so where meditation and other things is more of a gentle.
It's more gentle and progressive.
Yeah.
And I would just quote, there's this great Zen consciousness teacher, Adyashanti. He's an American guy. Somebody said, so would you say you're enlightened? And he said, not with a straight face.
Yeah.
And I would definitely say that. And he has more right to saying that he is than I do. But I've had good experiences, and I feel good about my progress, and I have more to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the other things that conversation like this does, I feel my own personal experiences enlivened by this conversation.
Yeah, me too.
And it's nice. It's a good feeling. But there's another thing that it does. I don't want to embarrass you or anything, but
no, please do.
It enlivens love. You know, I feel love for you because we're talking about something deep and beautiful and important, and we're sharing it. And it's the word. I mean, we could share it without the words. I think we could sit quietly and just feel each other's presence. But the words are a carrier. They're like a vehicle for this deeper level of life, level of being, right? And so I think that's another value. Like when people listen to you speak, they're going to feel this love from you and this attention of a very enlightened mind sharing with them. So you can cut that out if you
it's beautiful. Actually, it doesn't.
It's a deep feeling for me.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I appreciate about getting together with you. We see each other so rarely, but there's always that level of shared whatever.
Yeah. No, I feel that as well. And I mean, I don't try, it just seems to be the way I live my life. And there's this, often I'll say, you know, you walk the path until the path becomes you. And you no longer are walking a path because you are it.
Yeah.
And so it's sort of one of those things for me and just that way of being.
Yeah.
So thank you. Also, what's interesting, actually, you and I almost never have conversations like this when we get together. We always talk about just like what's going on in the world or with life, and just like we just sort of share time,
a little bit
space.
Like,
there's a little bit,
little cosmic stuff.
It's there, but it's not with. It's kind of so it's fun for me also just to get to have that conversation with you.
Yeah.
Because again, it is a thing. I almost feel as if we would say it to each other, and then we'd be like, it's like, all right, there's nothing else to say.
Yeah,
sort of.
It's true.
Because it is that feeling. But that's why I say that, is because that sensation that is very real for me too is there. So it just is like doesn't really require or even need words to bolster it or anything to shine a light on it. But it is nice. Yeah, absolutely. So. That's a great way to get into, if we may, the idea of awakening, because I'm kind of stubborn when it comes to the two words, awakening and enlightenment. And I think a lot of people really throw enlightenment. Oh, he's enlightened, or he's so enlightened, or had an enlightenment experience. And for me, like, that actually doesn't exist, because I think if a person's enlightened, they don't go backwards. They don't like slide back into being unenlightened. In a sense, and I have no idea what it means to be enlightened. I should just say that as well. But
I could give you my opinion, but let's keep going with your
absolutely.
thought.
So I hold that separate from awakening, and for me, awakening is this sort of process of having greater and greater levels of attention and ability to attend and to place your attention and awareness where it is you wish. And that is sort of like, as you keep awakening, you get to that place, and then. What I find is it unravels in the sense of, so I'll just take this like a little framework just because it's easy, a heuristic to learn to understand it. So basically we have this place where we're at kind of like a delusion in a level, like, and dreams are one of my favorite analogies for it. So, you know, if we just imagine we're dreaming, we don't know we're dreaming, we think it's all going on. So this is our waking reality. Just like, things are happening, but I'm not even really aware. I'm just like caught up in all of it.
Yeah.
And then you come to that place where you become aware of what's going on. You have this greater level of awareness. And so this would be like a level of lucidity in a dream, and you start to wake up to it. And then what happens is you finally do wake up to it in the dream or in this reality, and then you're watching it and you're observing it and you're very present all the time. So this is sort of an awakening process. And again, we're using words to separate and create constructs. So it's not really any of the things necessarily, but it's very useful for understanding and journeying along the path. So as you're awakening more and more, and you have this level of presence and awareness, you start to like get inklings and insights into the way the world works or the way that you work. And then what I've noticed is that people will go from that place, like delusion, just like totally just, I'm not aware. And then having moments of awareness and becoming more and more aware, and then realizing like, oh my gosh, I can place my attention where I wish. And like William James has that quote, for the moment, what you attend to becomes reality, something like that, paraphrase. So as I should probably slow down, but as we get so excited.
I'm with you. I don't know if anybody else is.
Yeah. So you can now place your attention on what you want, and that becomes more and more real for you, and more of what your life is. But where it gets really fascinating to me is now coming back to the lucid dream analogy. In the dream, when you wake up and you're lucid, often you want to manipulate the environment and take part and create. But there's another level of that where you can just sit back and witness. And then you're doing that. Now, that's a really fun place for me to play, because that's what I do day to day, is like I like to witness. And when you mentioned earlier about, we were speaking before we start recording, if I may bring this up, I can cut it if you want, but about writing and how you're just at that place right now where, you need to sit down and do the work and get it done, but you like to watch it unfold naturally and want to have that desire. So that's kind of part of it. It's like that. So it's as if that's fine. It just is what it is. We're just watching the world move and go, and we're at this sort of center point.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's kind of like, I look at that as like the base level of awakening, not even actually awakening itself.
Okay.
So just getting to that place where you have the awareness to observe and to see these like delineations and way of being in the world.
Okay. Now you have a different way of experiencing the process of awakening, or the process of becoming enlightened. It's actually pretty different from mine. I'm not big on dreams. I only sometimes am aware of dreaming, or if I am aware of it during the night, I promptly forget about it by the time the day comes.
Sure.
I don't process them. When I was younger, I used to do that a lot, but then I don't know, I just get tired of it. Yeah. There's so much stuff that's there.
Sure.
But I do think that actually what you're describing of that gradual, sequential in a way, I mean, it doesn't go bop, bop,
right,
bop, bop, bop. It may go off to the side and have detours.
Absolutely.
But it's kind of a progressive growth. I look at enlightenment in the same way.
Okay.
And I think that there's an ultimate state of like capital E enlightenment, where you are absolutely established in a cosmic awareness all the time. But it's a stepwise thing. You have glimpses earlier on, and you see a bigger picture, or you get in touch with your deeper self, like I described when I first got initiated into TM. I had this moment of enlightenment or awakening or whatever, but then it went away. And little by little, having that repeatedly, it starts to grow. So I'm getting more enlightened, or I'm awakening more.
Sure.
I think it's the same sort of thing. It's just a little bit different language to it. And in a way, I kind of like your way, because you do. I mean, from inside, I think you sort of do experience it as waking up. And enlightened is, what does that really mean?
Yeah.
But waking up, it's a meaningful way to think of it. So I like it.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you. I'm not going to let this go yet, because there's something, even though you don't have a dream life, I'm just using it as a way to explore, like to parallel it with our waking reality as a way of understanding, because some people will experience lucid dreaming, and actually it can be a obstacle to use that language, because if you haven't, or somebody doesn't know what lucid dreaming or hasn't had that experience, it can keep them from getting into like what I'm trying to peel back. So
I have experienced it, but I haven't gone for it.
Right. I think
you know what I mean?
That before.
You have it's like the moment presents itself, and you could either say, hey, this is cool, I'm going to jump in and do something here. Or you can say, oh, that's interesting, I'm going back to sleep.
Yeah, absolutely. Or you dissolve it or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, so that's fun for me, because I'm curious in that regard when you say, so you're on this more awakening or more enlightening, you got, excuse me, having a little more and more and more, and then it's as if it's like becoming just the way that you are again. So how does that sort of shift then your experience of the waking state? Or is this like life in general, or whatever? I don't need to say waking or sleeping anymore, but just like, how does...
Sure what you're getting at.
Yeah. So
Are you?
I just started trying to clarify for myself then,
Yeah.
in the sense of, okay, so again, because I'm trying to I use that framework that I just expressed as a way to know and understand what I was trying to get at.
Mm-hmm.
So but I'll use something different. And so I'm just looking for that right now, for the words and metaphors.
I think I got enough of what you were saying. I'm just saying that it's a little bit different in my my mode of experiencing, but I think I can understand what you're saying.
Yeah,
but I can't say anything particularly helpful to contribute because my experience is different.
Yeah.
No, almost like we're talking slightly different languages here.
A little bit, yeah. That's what I was trying to bridge and get into. I was trying to.
Yeah.
Well, also, I want this to be of service as much as possible to, anyone who's listening to this.
Yeah.
So this a lovely human being on the other side of this audio getting to experience this conversation with us. Hello.
Hello. Yeah.
Because there is something to it. So the reason why it's important to me is because there is that place where you go to where, okay, so another way I used it is at first as artists, we're creating. And that's what we think we're doing. I'm creating, I'm making this and that. But what happens is you start to realize something's almost moving through you. Yeah. And now you're actually co-creating. And it's you and something else. Yeah. And so this is the experience of being alive that I've been experiencing for a long time. Just so much of it where it's it's not me doing in a weird way. And it's just, I'm watching it all. You mentioned the word witness.
Yeah.
But it's like that. It's I'm witnessing it, but I'm also kind of it. But that's getting a little bit too ahead of myself.
No, I think it's real.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's this great thing I read once. I think it was Mozart. It might have been one of the other great composers. But he said, God is the composer. I just write it down.
Yeah.
It's coming from somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
But we are a participant in it. So I don't know if that's what you're talking about.
It is.
I think it is.
Yeah, that's it's that sensation, that feeling, and that knowing. So I think for some reason in my life, that's important for me to experience more of. And that's why I keep doing, that's why I write, that's why I play music, that's why I observe. Mm-hmm. Because when I observe and slow down, I really get a deeper sense of that experience. And I'm trying to understand or know it, whatever that is.
No, I think I'm just going to say how I look at this. I think that that deeper creative level is our more authentic inner self. Mm-hmm. And that is where the creativity springs from. But ordinarily people don't live there, and so sometimes that creativity feels like it's coming from somewhere else because it's not where we are.
Right.
We're more on the surface, or we're more in our mind, or more in our, and it's bubbling up from somewhere. It's, oh man, I got this inspiration. I got to write this down. I got to get this. I got to get the music out, whatever it is that we're doing, because it's coming from that deeper place. And I think the more what you're trying to do, I'm putting words in your mouth and you can just tell me to go fly a kite, but you want to live there all the time. Mm-hmm. And you want to have that creative center be who you are. Mm-hmm. And so every expression that you make, whether it's in the form of art or whether it's just a conversation or whether it's making dinner, it's coming from that place. Mm-hmm. Right? Isn't that what we all want?
I believe so.
It's what I want.
Yeah, to a great extent. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, that's how I think about it. Mm-hmm. Is that meaningful?
It's very meaningful. It's a sort of lucid reflection back on my experience of it.
Okay.
How I'm always trying to explore it again. And that's the very nature of this conversation for me is part of that, of just being in it. So this is a funny thing for me. And I guess it's just a moment of honesty. I've shared this with you before, but I'll share it publicly. So sometimes I just don't speak about things because I just don't think they're for people to know or to share or to understand yet, or they won't get it. Mm-hmm. And so it's just there's no reason for me to share that or to say or to speak it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I almost prefaced our conversation before we started having this conversation with this, if there's places we don't want to go or just things that we would see like that aren't really for everyone to listen to, whoever might hear it, then maybe we don't share that.
Right.
And I just share that because maybe I'm always a little bit confounded with like how far one goes in a conversation with others, particularly when, yeah, you get it.
I
right?
Totally get it. I think that you're talking about the art of teaching.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the teacher, like you said, you like to start with basics and build from there. And it may seem superficial, but it's the basics. And it's where, you have to start. And I said that I do that in the chapters that I write, in books I write. And I really think that that's the art of teaching, is to give the student what they can handle and a little bit more,
Yes. Yeah.
And to lead them and to throw too much out there. I mean, there's this thing in the Bible, which it's a kind of crude, but I think that's the point. Is cast ye not pearls before swine. Jesus says to people, if you're a teacher and you know things, those are pearls.
Yeah.
And, people are not swine, but people are not ready for some of those pearls. And the second part of what he said, lest they turn and rend you, because they'll attack you if you lay too much on them, that, it's beyond their ability to deal with it. And I think that's a danger that teachers have, even on a very small level. I mean, we're talking about the great masters. If they have to be careful,
sure.
then we have to be careful. And so I think it's just the better part of wisdom to censor ourselves a little bit and present what we really feel we understand, and not say things that are, there's always the temptation to say something a little bit more, it sounds a little bit better than what we really know from deep inside, because it sounds good. That's not a good idea.
Yeah.
And and also to take into consideration who's listening. And that's it.
That's beautiful. Sometimes I look at that as like a person will only hear what they're ready to hear. And so in some sense, I'm kind of safe to say whatever I'm going to say. And then also, again, one of the reasons why I hold back too is because there are things I am not able to translate myself yet. Experiences or whatever. And so I can say something, but it's not right. It's not like, not in right and wrong, but it's just not together yet, or it's not there. And I can't really, I need somebody who has an experience similar to, or gets, or is willing to be free of judgment in that regard, to be able to hear and understand what it is I'm trying to understand myself.
Yeah. And you need to look at it in yourself and also express it outward to whoever, and kind of refine the way of expressing it by hearing how it comes out.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. This is one of the reasons I also on Questing the Unknown, like on the website, I wrote about the freedom to be who you are begins almost in a sense really in not judging yourself. And particularly when you don't judge yourself so much and you don't judge others, it allows you to allow others to have the freedom to be who they are and express themselves as they want to express themselves as well.
Absolutely.
So, and it's kind of funny, like what's coming up for me right now is, in a weird way, it's almost like I almost feel as if I'm protecting myself from having to explain myself in ways that I don't want to have to do. Or it's like, in the sense of what we're saying, like I could feel a little bit of that kind of like tinge of not a protection of the ego necessarily, but which I love the ego. I think the ego is great, but a lot of people just really don't like that concept.
I'm a big fan of the ego.
I am too. It's gotten bashed in the world. I think it's unfortunate, but
well, it all depends on what you mean and how it expresses.
Yeah.
So we should talk about that. But finish your thoughts,
sure.
please.
It's just sometimes it's almost a question. So this is why when you said that one thing to me, it stuck so deeply when you said it's a responsibility when we last spoke. It was really so fascinating to me because I was so fascinated by the very nature of that phrase, of those words that you spoke, why they stayed with me.
Yeah.
Out of like that conversation. And so I explored it and looked at it. And I don't want to run away from what I was saying necessarily, but basically it's like sometimes it feels as if that responsibility, when you start opening up certain ways, then you have a responsibility to continue to expand and expound on what you opened up and started to create. And if I don't ever do that, then I never have to go further with it. So maybe.
So if you censor yourself enough,
I never have to
avoid that
speak.
fate.
But people ask, then I'm safe, and I don't have to like get into it with people because the conversations can be exhausting, and also people will often fight you when I don't want to fight. I don't want to argue. I don't want to have to like try to prove something to someone else. I want them to have their own experience and want it for themselves, for example. Anyways, I'm kind of getting muddled.
No. That's very valid, good points. But I think, if I remember correctly, which is always a question with me, I think I said to you last time we talked, when we had that little riff about responsibility, I said, I see you as a teacher.
Yes.
And I see that you will have that destiny in the life of the modern world. I don't know how big a destiny, but you're a teacher. You have a lot to offer. You express yourself well. You have deep experiences, and you have love and compassion. So I think it's kind of inevitable that you're going to end up being in that role with people. And I think you said you kind of know that.
Yeah. It just is.
As much as you might want to run away from it.
Yeah, it just happens.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And it's almost as if it's either one way or another, some kind of conversation comes up when I meet people or I'm in conversation with someone I don't know. It just happens. They'll ask the questions or they'll want to know. Then I'll ask the questions of them. I love doing that and just exploring and seeing what they know and letting them sort of unravel their own experience for themselves as opposed to me saying, hey, check this out. You should do this. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is frustrating for a lot of people because sometimes I've gotten a couple conversations where they just want you to tell them, which is cool too. It's just what it is. It's all part of the process. Yeah. I do it myself. So tell me something. What do I need to know now? No. Did you want to come to the ego and talk about that at all?
Well, actually, it's relevant to just exactly this thing we're talking about. Because I think there are people who set themselves up as teachers from the ego.
Sure.
They want the recognition, they want the fame, they want to make an income from it, whatever the motivation, it's not a pure motivation. Which is why in most of the great spiritual traditions, you're not allowed to go out and teach until your master tells you. You study with somebody, and at a certain point he'll say, and I'm saying he because it's almost always been a man, but it could certainly not be. Could be a woman just as well. But the teacher will tell you, now's your time. Go and teach. And most people who get that message say, what? Me? I'm just a student. I'm just a disciple. I'm not ready. I have nothing to offer. And the teacher will push you out and say, you go and teach. There's a woman in Boise, Dana Marsh. She teaches at the Heart of Dharma Buddhist group. Her teacher was a man named Anam Tubden. And that's what happened with her. I think she's like a preschool teacher or something, and she was studying with him for years. And then he told her, I want you to go and start teaching, set up a group, get a place. And she said, come on, you got to be kidding. But she's doing it, and she's a terrific teacher, and she has a lot of students coming, and they all appreciate her a lot. So I think that your feeling of maybe you want to avoid, because I don't see you coming from your ego. I mean, ego is okay in a certain way.
Sure.
But then there's this other way of self-aggrandizement, which I don't think is your thing at all. that's a way that I think the ego leads people astray and creates problems. And I just don't see that with you. I think that you will inevitably fall into that role. As you just said, it's happening. It just happens by itself.
It has forever.
And that's...
not forever, but for a long time.
Yeah. And that's because you have a status that people want to learn from or grow from or share in. And it's a blessing.
It's all madness in here.
But nobody knows that out there.
Right. I always tell my friend that I'm the coolest person around, but nobody knows it.
Right.
And also my narcissism knows no end. So in that regard, I keep to myself much. For everybody else is good. Yeah, and teaching is an interesting thing too. I mean, because what is teaching anyways? I mean, there's so many different ways to teach.
Exactly. Just
even our own actions and the way we are in the world, writing,
all kinds
conversation,
of ways.
So many different ways. Yeah. So how it ends up being expressed is who knows. So cool.
Yeah.
I'm gonna drive a little bit more pleasure out of the ego topic for a moment.
Okay. Go for it.
Because it's what I want.
Lay it on me.
Well, I think ego, just because we said, like, let's talk about it for a moment. So that aspect of the ego that I always feel that is healthy, and ego is a really funny word as well. Like once upon a time, I would have more of a definitive definition of what ego is from like a psychological standpoint, but I seem to have lost all of that knowledge from once a long time ago or wherever it existed. But it's this idea of like it driving, sort of my a need for self-expression or not even driving, but just being a part of like me wanting what I want and being okay with that is really, I think, a beautiful thing. And it's healthy in the sense because I know, like for me, I believe based off of my theories and values that I've created that I almost have, and this, so now this is funny. Now this almost seems ego driven by expressing this, but what I did is like, I created basically like a way of living where I won't do something to another sentient being unless it's consensual. So in knowing that's how I am and exist as much as I can, I've sort of like protected myself so I can act out and be who I am, pretty much beyond bounds and free to do as I wish, because I know that if I am causing pain and suffering to anyone, it's me, and I consent to doing that, but I won't do that to others, not with intent. And so that allows me to go for and create what it is I want and be how I want to be in the world. And some might see that as like ego driven or like you have a big ego, but and those two kind of mesh together, and it's not ever, I know I'm safe because I'm not like abusing others or manipulating others for my own benefit, which I think is where the ego gets the bad rap. It's like, I'm going to step all over you and make you suffer so I can get what I want. Yeah. And it doesn't have to be that.
Or even if you don't have that intention of making anyone suffer, you don't care if you do.
Yeah, right.
Not
right.
you.
Yeah,
a person who's driven by that. I'm going to do what I want. Yeah. Screw you. If it's not good for you, it's too bad.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's where
there's one or two people like that in the world.
Just a few.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so interesting. Like, yeah.
But I'm not going to say a fine line because it's probably more than a fine line, but between that and what you're saying of creating your own life and your own values and your own little Emeric universe, or big Emeric universe, is the case.
Thank you.
I think of it as a big universe. Yeah.
Feels so much better that way. So. That's funny. That could unravel in so many ways.
Yeah.
Let's psychoanalyze that. Yeah, no, but absolutely. So, so I'm gonna close this down in a moment here, just to bring this to an end. But first, like, I also like want to come back to that idea of like attention and awareness, and being is just like for again, the love that's listening. Just that is so important. It just is everything to me. Like the ability to attend and just to continue to like be able to be present and to build that skill set until it just becomes the way you are in the world. So I'm gonna say that, and if you want to add to that, that would be beautiful. And then I would love for you to share a little bit more about what you're creating and doing in life, and then where people can go explore and find you a little bit more, if you will, or not. Complete anonymity. I will not share your name on this interview.
No.
conversation with.
No, we've already mentioned my name a whole bunch of times.
Yes.
More than I thought we would. But say again, just give me a reprise of what you kind of summarized your thing attention.
Yeah.
And if you want me to say something about it, I need to hear it.
Sure. I was just curious if you want to just like talk maybe just for a moment, and we might not need to, but just like the importance that awareness and presence has for you in your life, but just in general we'll just speak for you, but and just like how much that matters, or like how that's good enough. I think others, if you want to sort of give somebody a tip or whatever on how to like increase their awareness and attention, feel free to, but it's not really necessary. I'm just curious.
I'll be honest, because I don't really know how to do anything else with you. That's not something I've put much attention on.
Cool.
I just have felt for a long time that I just am what I am, and I'm okay with it, and I'm not trying to.
That's beautiful.
To change my behavior or manipulate is kind of a crude word, but direct how I put my attention on people or on things. I kind of trust that I'm okay with it. When I make a mistake and I do something that hurts somebody's feelings, then I think, well, I don't know, maybe I'm not so cool after all. but it
always hurts.
Thank God it doesn't happen very often. It's usually with my wife, naturally, person that I spend most of my time with and am closest and most totally open with, unguarded, completely, totally unguarded with her. Whereas with most people, even if I'm speaking freely and all that, and I feel spontaneous, there's this little sense of, maybe be a little careful, back in the background.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Well, I got to say, I don't feel that with you at all.
Sweet, let the insults fly.
Comes out, yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't know. So I will say, though, that I really, really appreciate people that I feel are present and are really, there in the moment. It makes a big difference in how comfortable I feel with them. If they're not there, I wonder where they are. What are they thinking? What are they hiding? Etc.
Sure. And
it's a very good feeling when somebody is very present. And I'll just tell you, there was an interesting article. It was an op-ed in the New York Times, which I'm a kind of a New York Times addict, unfortunately.
You got that New York in your blood.
I've got New York in my blood, baseball. And I'm the child of two journalists, and that's what I do. I read the paper every day online. And there was an op-ed by a guy, and the theme was his sort of electronic addiction, internet, email, and always buried in somewhere online. And he was trying to get out of it, and the thing that finally made him take a month off from all electronics is, he said, I was on an escalator in New York in a building, and there was a little girl, I think he said she was about 3 or 4, and she was yanking on her father's arm and saying, "Daddy, Daddy, listen to me." And he had his nose buried in his phone. And he said, "I am listening to you." And she said, "Daddy, you're not listening to me. Listen to me." "I am listening to you." Never looking up, and obviously not listening to her. Not listening to her. Maybe he was hearing her words. And the guy said, my point bringing this up, he wasn't present to her. And I see that a lot. I always feel terrible when I see two people sit down at a table in a restaurant or a coffee shop, and each one is on their phone or their tablet or whatever, and they don't look at each other. They're not present. Why bother being with another person if you're not going to be there with the other person? So it's a very important value to me, and so I guess I do care about it, and I guess I do not bury myself in my phone unless I'm by myself, or I want to take a moment and say, excuse me, I need to check something. So I maybe I'll take back what I said about it not being important to me, because it is really important to me
Definitely.
as a value for my life and other people's lives. So much for that.
Yeah, sweet. My work is done here.
Okay. No.
Well, you know what? Actually, the why it's so important to me is because I think it's the way to freedom, and I think we're bound. We're in bondage. We're complete slaves if we're not present and aware, because we're not able to make choices. There's so many things going on around us, and so much wonder and beauty that if we don't have the ability to at least be aware of that, we don't get to choose. And if we're not in choice, then we're being moved around and pushed around in the world in a way by some hand or another.
Yeah.
Even if it's just our own. And that's okay too. I mean, but if it's all okay in that regard.
In one sense, it's all okay, because it's all part of the cosmic play.
Yeah.
But on another sense, we got to have discrimination. We have to have values.
Yeah.
I think. I mean, that's another really interesting topic for discussion.
Yeah.
Which we probably don't want to get into right now.
Yeah, there's a bunch that has come up that I already want to keep going with, actually.
When you're desperate for somebody else to talk to for another program, call me up. Because,
okay.
I mean, there's this new agey sort of trend, non-judgmental. And from one point of view, that's beautiful, and I support it. But from another point of view, it can lead to being really dumb about things.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, we were given our intellects and our discriminative faculties for our reason.
Yeah.
And we need to use them and not just accept everything that comes along. We could accept it in one, like you said, it's all good. On the other hand,
yes,
we have to make decisions and choices.
Absolutely. That's actually a really important point for me, because when I talk about like not judging others and not judging, there's a difference for me between judging the person and their value as a human being or as a sentient being, whatever it might be for me, versus judging a behavior or an idea or an action toward. Yeah. And I think that's really important, because it can get, and what you said, that was one of the things too that always has kind of rubbed me a little bit strangely or wrong, is this idea of like, it's all good. Like, it's not. Well,
yes and no.
Exactly. Yeah. And so,
no, but what you said was perfect.
Yeah.
Between judging the person.
Yeah.
You're a perfect child of God, however you want to put that. But your ideas are really off the wall.
Yeah. Yeah.
Possibly harmful. So it's important to discriminate. Yeah.
Yeah. It can be very useful.
Yeah.
So, and hopefully, and people will listen and hear this how they hear it. So I'll let this slide off into their minds in that way for them to use as they wish. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to add or say? Or
no, I'm happy. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, me too.
A lot. It got me thinking about some things I don't usually think about. And, it's great. And
cool.
I will say, if you ever want to talk to me again,
I would love to.
But we'll talk anyway, whether we record it or not.
Absolutely.
We will have conversations. So,
and I love you as well. So I hope I didn't embarrass you.
No. You surprised me there. But no, that's
You're blushing.
I am blushing. Yeah, I am blushing.
Okay, cool.
I'm not used to hearing that from men in my life. I'm not in that line of relationships. Sure. But it's beautiful to hear. And a few of my men friends will say that to me. But it's beautiful. And it's true. I mean, I love you too. And,
absolutely.
And thank God we have that ability to love each other and share that.
Yeah.
My wife thinks the bottom line for everything in life is love. It's all about love.
I would love to have a conversation with her about that, because I disagree with that statement. But I don't, and I do. Yeah. I'm so excited to speak with her. Roberta's amazing.
I think it'll happen soon.
Yeah.
Maybe even by the end of this week, if you're going to still be around.
Okay. I might be in town for a little bit longer.
We'll see.
Cool. Well, Jack, thank you so much.
Thanks.
I'll just put the links to your website and wherever else if you want me to. I really appreciate you. So anything I can do just to get more Jack in people's lives.
Thanks, Emeric, for asking me to do this with you.
Absolutely. And that is this episode of Questing the Unknown. I love you too. So I really do. And thank you so much for tuning in and taking part in this journey with me. That is it. Have a beautiful, beautiful moment in your life and going questing the unknown. We will have more episodes coming for you very soon. If there's a topic of interest that you would like me to explore and dive into, or someone that you think would be fun for me to have a conversation with, I will happily hear that and listen to that and consider it. So thank you once again. Be well, and I will be with you soon. What happens when you ask questions and go silent and just listen? What happens when you go play with the mystery of the universe? What happens when you go questing the unknown? You were born into a mystery. And now you are experiencing life.